It was 6:19 a.m., too quiet to feel real, when the horizon split open and two dark shapes tore through the calm, low and fast, aimed straight at the most powerful warship on Earth. The sea was flat. The sky was clean. The kind of morning sailors remember forever. Then the engines arrived. Not loud at first, just a distant vibration that made heads turn and conversations stop. Two jets, Venezuelan K-8s, small frames, sharp wings, cutting toward a U.S. aircraft carrier like knives through silk. No radio call, no warning, just intent. Seconds mattered now. Radar lit up, timelines compressed. A routine patrol slid into something else entirely. The jets dropped low, skimming barely 2,000 feet above the water, banking hard across the carrier's bow. A shockwave rolled across the deck. Not an attack, a message, and everyone felt it. On the bridge, no one raised their voice. No one reached for drama. The order came quietly. Maintain course. Maintain speed. Do not turn. That decision mattered more than any missile, because this was the red line moment, the kind that decides whether history bends or breaks. One reaction too fast, and the story changes forever. One overcorrection, and restraint becomes regret. The jets came again, closer this time, faster. Near misses measured not in miles, but in heartbeats. Sailors froze mid-step. Cameras tracked every angle. Sensors drank in heat signatures, vectors, intent. The carrier's systems weren't panicking. They were calculating. This is where most people misunderstand power. Power isn't the noise. It's the algorithm underneath it. Escort destroyers slid into tighter formation, steel geometry locking into place. Super Hornets lifted cleanly from the deck, climbing without haste, shadowing without threat. No radar locks, no flares, just presence, precision, control. The numbers tell a quiet story. Two jets worth maybe $20 million each, burning fuel for a headline, versus a $13 billion carrier, a floating system of systems, radar layered over radar, doctrine layered over decades, judgment layered over firepower. This wasn't a standoff. It was asymmetry. The jets cut across again. One dipped lower than the last, reckless, almost desperate. A pass so close it rattled hull plating and nerves. For 10 seconds, the entire ocean held its breath. What would you do with 10 seconds left? Because somewhere in those seconds is the difference between dominance and disaster. Inside the carrier, nothing changed. Speed held. Heading locked. Weapons stayed silent. Not because they couldn't fire, but because they didn't need to. Every move by the jets was being recorded, measured, archived. Every mistake was being logged for later. This wasn't about winning the moment. It was about owning the narrative after. That's the mechanism most people miss. The real weapon wasn't missile. It was restraint. Eventually, the jets broke away. Their arcs widened. Their aggression thinned. One last circle, like a glance over the shoulder. Then they turned south and vanished into haze. No explosion. No wreckage. Just absence. An hour later, state television would tell a different story. Grainy footage. Bold claims. Forced retreat. A victory declared with words instead of facts. But satellites don't lie. Data doesn't blink. The carrier never turned. Not 1 degree. Not 1 knot. And that's the paradox. The loudest response was silence. The strongest move was stillness. The message wasn't sent in afterburners. It was embedded in discipline. This is where the lesson lands. Anyone can pull a trigger. Anyone can escalate. That's easy. What's rare is the ability to hold the line when adrenaline demands motion, to trust systems over ego, to let foresight outrank firepower. In leadership, in conflict, in life, this is a paradigm shift. Strategy over force, mind over mass, judgment over noise. Because every arena has its flyby moments. Someone testing you, provoking you, hoping you react first so they can define the story. The question is never whether you're strong enough to strike. It's whether you're strong enough not to. The sea went quiet again that morning. The carrier kept moving. The world moved on, but the data stayed. The lesson stayed. And now it's yours. If you were there, watching those jets dive in, second from chaos, would you fire or would you hold a line? It was 6:21, routine on the log, anything but routine in the data, when two faint returns appeared on the carrier's radar, accelerating fast enough to turn a quiet patrol into a live systems exam. At first, it looked like noise, small signatures, low altitude, but noise is what systems are built to interrogate. The clock ticked. 6:21 became 6:22. Track stabilized. Vectors sharpened. The lattice woke up. Radar stitched to infrared. Infrared stitched to signals. Signals stitched to human judgment. Not panic calculation. The jets pushed closer. Aggressive angles. Unsafe passes. A shockwave skimmed the sea. To the naked eye, it was bravado. To the network, it was a dataset forming in real time. Speed, altitude, rate of climb, intent probabilities updating every second. No alarms, no drama, just math. By 6:26, the picture resolved. For context now, tight spacing, escalation without escalation, classic provocation. The carrier didn't maneuver. That was the first tell. When a system doesn't move, it's not frozen. It's confident. Escorts tightened their geometry, not as a threat, but as a checksum. Fighters launched and climbed into the envelope, not to engage, but to verify. Precision over posture. This is where modern conflict lives, not in explosions, but in synchronization. Every movement fed the algorithm. The Hawkeye's sweep filled the sky with certainty. Data links streamed into cockpits, bridges, and consoles, collapsing distance into knowledge. The jets crossed paths again. Near miss. Another shockwave. The system didn't flinch because flinching creates blind spots. 6:32, the window narrowed. The contacts dipped lower, then climbed, testing thresholds. What would you do with 10 seconds left? Humans feel 10 seconds as pressure. Systems feel 10 seconds as resolution. The carrier's network ran simulations faster than fear. Outcomes branched. Rules of engagement remained intact. No missile tones. No radar locks. Silence by design. Here's the mechanism most people miss. Dominance today isn't a platform. It's an architecture. A carrier is not steel and deck plates. It's an algorithm with propulsion. An invisible lattice where sensors argue, verify, and agree before anyone raises a voice. That lattice doesn't shout. It waits. The imbalance was staggering. Seconds of provocation versus decades of doctrine. Jets worth tens of millions performing theater against a floating system refined by trillions of data points. Cost asymmetry isn't just dollars, it's time. You can't compress 30 years of integration into a flyby. The turning point arrived quietly. One jet pinged a targeting radar, brief, deliberate. The system logged it. Noted frequency, duration. Intent confidence ticked up, then settled. No response required. The absence of response was a response. The network had learned enough. The jets broke formation. Their arcs widened. Aggression lost coherence. They peeled away. Southbound, signatures thinning into haze. The lattice kept tracking, because learning doesn't stop when the threat leaves. It archives. It refines. It prepares. Later, words would try to rewrite the graph. Claims would spike without evidence. But graphs don't care about claims. Data doesn't blink. The carrier never altered course. The escorts never loosened. The fighters never crossed a line. No missiles fired. No dominance lost. This is the cold truth that unsettles people who love spectacle. Code beats mass. Systems drown noise. Foresight outpaces firepower. The strongest move in a connected battle space is often restraint, because restraint preserves optionality. For engineers, this moment should feel familiar. Stress tests don't announce themselves. They arrive disguised as chaos. The question isn't whether the inputs are hostile. It's whether the architecture can absorb them without rupture. That morning, it did. But here's the unresolved edge. Every system still ends at a human decision, somewhere between automation and instinct. Someone must choose when silence stops being wisdom. The algorithm can recommend. Doctrine can constrain. Only judgment decides. The sea went quiet. The clocks kept ticking. The lattice kept learning. And next time, when the provocation is faster, smarter, quieter, what will you trust first? It was loud on purpose. Engine screaming low over the water, wings flashing sunlight. Designed to feel like a threat, built to force a reaction before anyone had time to think. That's how bluffs work. They arrive fast. They demand emotion. They count on fear to do the work that strength can't. The jets came in hot, hugging the surface, tearing across the carrier's bow like a challenge written in sound. Shockwaves rolled. Deck crews froze mid-step. Cameras tracked everything. To the outside world, it looked reckless. To the people running the system, it looked familiar. This was an attack. It was intimidation theater. The timeline tightened. Each pass was closer than the last. Lower, louder, riskier. The kind of escalation designed to compress decision-making, to collapse patience into panic. One jet dipped. Another crossed tight. A near miss measured in meters, not miles. But here's the first reveal most people missed. The hard points were empty. No missiles. No payload. Just metal and noise. A bluff dressed up as dominance. And bluffs only work if the other side believes you're willing to pay the price. Inside the carrier, the response was almost invisible. No sudden turns. No defensive theatrics. Speed held. Heading locked. Escort slid into position with quiet precision, not to threaten, but to remove options. Fighters rose into the sky and stayed just close enough to watch. Not engage. Watch. That restraint wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. Every aggressive move by the jets burned fuel and credibility. Every second in the air wrote checks they couldn't cash. Meanwhile, the carrier collected something far more valuable: data, flight profiles, risk tolerance, command discipline, how far they were willing to push before pulling away. This was no longer about jets versus ship. It was about narrative control. The jets tried again. Louder, lower. One final dive. Steep and dramatic, cutting toward the formation like a blade meant to draw blood or provoke fire. 10 seconds where anything could happen. 10 seconds where history waits to see who blinks. What would you do with 10 seconds left? Because that's where bluffs demand payment. The carrier didn't move. That was the moment the bluff collapsed. No evasive maneuver. No escalation. Just stillness. Absolute. Unshakable. The kind of stillness that tells you your opponent sees the game you're playing and has decided not to play it. The jets pulled up hard. Too hard. The move wasn't strength. It was relief. They'd pushed as far as they could. Without crossing a line, they couldn't uncross. The noise faded. The formation loosened. The theater ended. And suddenly, the cost asymmetry became obvious. One side spent fuel, airframes, and political capital to manufacture fear. The other spent nothing and gained leverage. One side chased a headline. The other archived proof. That's the hidden math of deception. Pressure feels powerful in the moment, but patience compounds over time. Later, the story would be rewritten. Claims would surface. Victory would be declared with words. But words are cheap. Data is permanent. The carrier never altered course. The bluff never forced reaction. The narrative advantage evaporated the moment the jets turned away. This is a lesson entrepreneurs and strategists learn the hard way. Loud competitors make noise to rush your decisions. Aggressive moves are often decoys, designed to test your thresholds and bait you into overreaction. The person who moves first under pressure usually loses, not because they're weak, but because they surrender the long game. True dominance doesn't announce itself. It waits. The carrier didn't win by overpowering the jets. It won by letting them expose themselves. Empty hardpoints, unsafe passes, a final dive that proved desperation, not control. The bluff failed because it was never backed by willingness to escalate. Strategy beats force when patience beats pressure. And that principle scales. In business, in negotiations, in life. When someone pushes hard and fast, ask yourself what they need from you. Fear? Speed? A mistake? If you deny them that, the bluff starts to crack on its own. But here's the unresolved edge. Not every bluff is empty. Not every threat is theater. Somewhere out there is a provocation backed by real intent, real cost, real consequence. The challenge is knowing which is which. Before the moment passes, the jets disappeared into the horizon. The carrier kept moving. The data stayed behind. And next time someone comes in loud, reckless, demanding a reaction, will you flinch? It was 6:32 when the first jet screamed past the steel deck, close enough to rattle bones, loud enough to make instinct beg for retaliation. And that's exactly what it was designed to do. Pressure arrived at full speed. No warning, no pause, just raw noise ripping across calm water. Shockwaves slamming into hull like a challenge thrown with both fists. Sailors felt it in their chests. The ocean shuddered. Cameras snapped to life. The countdown began. One pass, then another, each one closer, faster, louder. This is how pressure tests are written. Not with bullets, but with proximity. Not with fire, but with fear. The jets came in low, reckless, daring anyone to blink first. The message was simple: react or look weak. Most people react. That's why this moment mattered. Inside the carrier, nothing changed. No sharp turns. No sudden commands. Speed held. Heading locked. The deck stayed steady beneath thousands of tons of steel and discipline. Escorts slid into position with mechanical calm, tightening the formation like a fist slowly closing. Not to strike, but to stabilize. The jets came again. Another shockwave. Another near miss. This time so close you could feel the heat trail off the engines. 10 seconds. That's all it takes for a panic to become action. 10 seconds where adrenaline screams louder than logic. What would you do with 10 seconds left? Weapons stayed silent. That silence wasn't weakness. It was dominance. Fighters were already in the air, climbing smoothly, shadowing every move with precision. Sensors track speed, angle, intent. Algorithms updated probabilities in real time. Every variable was accounted for. The system wasn't guessing. It was waiting. This wasn't chaos. This was control under stress. Pressure is supposed to break posture. It's supposed to force mistakes. But the carrier didn't bend. It didn't flinch. It didn't shout back. It absorbed the pressure and turned it into data. Another pass. Even closer. The jets were pushing now. Burning fuel, burning margin, burning credibility. You could hear it in the engines. See it in the angles. Aggression rising because the expected reaction never came. That's the turning point most people miss. When pressure doesn't work, it backfires. The escorts locked in tighter. The geometry became perfect. Weapons remained cold, not because they couldn't fire, but because they didn't need to. The carrier's stillness radiated authority. It told the truth without saying a word. We are not rushed, and we are not threatened. The jets hesitated, just a fraction of a second. But in high-speed airspace, hesitation is everything. One jet broke formation slightly. Another climbed higher than planned. The rhythm cracked. The pressure leaked out. And then it happened. They turned away. No explosion. No final pass. No victory lap. Just a retreat disguised as routine. Engines fading. Shapes shrinking into the horizon. The ocean exhaled. 0 shots fired. Total control maintained. That's the metric that matters. One side spent fuel, risk, and nerve trying to manufacture dominance. The other spent nothing and walked away stronger. Psychological victory isn't loud. It's final. This is aggressive triumph in its purest form. Not violence, but refusal. Not reaction, but resolve. The kind of strength built in training halls. Forged in discipline, proven under load. Gym goers understand this instinctively. Anyone who's ever held weight under strain knows the truth. Real power doesn't explode. It stabilizes. It holds form when everything says collapse. Anyone can slam weight once. Strength is keeping posture when the bar tries to crush you. Same principle, different arena. The carrier didn't win by overpowering the jets. It won by outlasting the pressure, by letting the aggressor exhaust itself, by standing unmovable while chaos burned around it. Strategy beats force. Mind beats mass. Foresight beats firepower. That's not theory. That's operational reality. But here's the edge that never goes away. Pressure will come again. Faster, smarter, quieter. One day, silence won't be enough. One day, restraint will give way to response. And the system will have to shift from stillness to motion in a heartbeat. The question isn't whether you can strike. The question is whether you can wait until it matters. So when pressure hits you full speed, when noise demands reaction, and fear begs for release, do you explode? Or do you stand there, unblinking, until the other side breaks? Because real power doesn't shout.